After the pilgrimage, there is a 4-day festival known as Eid al-Adha, the festival of sacrifice. And so again, the connection there is to Abraham's sacrifice of Ishmael. Right? The Quran does mention Isaac, so Isaac is recognized in the Quran, but Ishmael is the special son. And so here is Abraham willing to sacrifice anything to God, and so the expectation is that Muslims will as well. And so the ritual sacrifice, sometimes, especially on the pilgrimage, will involve the ritualistic slaughter of animals. But that meat on the pilgrimage and in other places where it's offered will be offered to the poor and the needy, people that don't have. The festival, of course, is the end of the pilgrimage season, but it is celebrated by Muslims throughout the world. So even if you don't go on the Hajj, you're often going to be practicing Eid. It does, as I mentioned already, involve ritual sacrifice. But it also has tended to be a time of giving gifts, especially to children. Right? And so this idea of the blessings that come from God's service, the blessings that Abraham gave to his son. Which leads sometimes in the media to some rather odd congruences. I forgot to put that slide in there, I apologize. A bunch of children on Eid in Muslim lands holding Barbie, right? Muslim ideas of gender, and here they're getting Barbie to your children, Muslim children, right? It's a much better picture than what I'm describing. I don't know why I didn't pull that slide. So Eid, also a very important practice or festival. Connected with other aspects of practice is the following of Sharia. You'll hear it pronounced a variety of ways, especially in the West. Sharia seems to be the one that is probably more the one chosen by Muslims. It is referred to as the law of God, as base. A concept very similar to what we find in other traditions, including Christianity, that the essence of faith. And if you truly have faith, you're going to live the right type of way. So at core, that's the way Sharia is understood. It's a way of life. It's based on moral imperatives, right? An ethical code. It's maxims, admonitions, legal sanctions, prohibitions. The word itself probably means something like the path to life-giving water. And so this is the way that you find life. The word, as I mentioned before, Hebrew and Arabic share a lot of similarities. The word Sharia is very similar to the word Torah, as far as which is the Hebrew for law. It covers things like behaviors, rituals, beliefs, but then also covers things like contracts, punishment for crimes, marriages, wills, divorce. In the West, especially in the United States, we have been given a skewed view of Sharia. Because often Sharia is talked about in the context of these rather fundamentalistic Muslim-majority countries that have made Sharia the law of the land, and the extremes that some of these countries go to. Now, I don't want to water it down and say there aren't some things that we would say are, it's horrible that you have honor killings, right? And so killing daughters because of something that having premarital sex or something, right? Something I think is sinful, but it's not death sentence. But in some countries it would be. And so, yes, there are those aspects, but many Muslim countries are actually pretty secular. They're not, and which leads to the fundamentalism, because the fundamentalists don't think the country is religious enough. But the other thing as well with Sharia, for most Muslims, the understanding is that Sharia is not to be forced upon an unwilling person. The following of Sharia is believed to be a personal decision, right? that you can't force on somebody. And it's between you and God and not a matter of the state. According to the Quran in Surah 2, line 257, there is no compulsion in religion. That being said, of course, there are those expressions of people that are using this for the laws of the land. Many fundamentalists want to see it that way. And sometimes there are cases of immigrants who have practiced some of these things, even in the United States. But sometimes those expressions are actually more traditional practices of a specific nationality rather than things found in Sharia. The other thing as well is that every so often you will see these states or sometimes even a national discussion of Muslims trying to get Sharia law established in the United States. There does not appear to be any sort of widespread Muslim conspiracy to try to get Sharia law established as a recognized United States law. That just doesn't seem to be the case. Now, there are some situations where Muslims in specific court cases have asked for, well, according to Sharia, this is how we live, and so as a matter of the freedom of religion, you should consider that in making your decision. And some people have read some decisions made by judges related to that, and so there's this concern, Sharia is going to become the law of the land or the law of a specific city. Well, we have, and this is one that's not talked about too often, there are Jewish rabbinical courts where Orthodox Jews can appeal or can get certain concessions to. So there are other exceptions where certain religions have a legal system unto their own that's kind of distinct from the United States legal system. And so I don't believe that we have this great concern that this is going to become the law of the land. Besides, the First Amendment is still in the Constitution, right? And so these great fears are often whipped up for political purposes and not because of any true threat. Within Sharia, there are a wide variety of considerations regarding behaviors and ethics. Essentially, there are 5 categories of actions or behaviors within Sharia. Here again, I'll just share with you the Arabic term, but you don't necessarily need to know that for an exam. There are those things that are halal, those things that are lawful, those things that are obligatory. So the 5 prayers, the salat prayers, would be something that would be halal. In bigger cities, you might see a halal butcher. And just like Jews have kosher food, there are halal butchers that are killing and preparing the meat according to Muslims' tradition. So those things that are halal, those things that are lawful, as well as those things that are required or obligatory. Other actions are mustahab, or recommended. These are things that you should do, like extra prayers, and saying prayers in addition to the salat prayers. Other practices are mubah. They are neither necessary or unnecessary. They're kind of matters of opinion to some extent, we might think of. And a lot of that depends on the imam you kind of follow. It depends on a specific line of jurisprudence in Islam. So some people would say smoking would be mubah. It's not necessary, you don't need to do it, but it's not unnecessary, it's not against Islam. Other people feel, other imams feel that smoking would be makruh, reprehensible. Right? It's disliked, it's not forbidden, but it is something to be avoided. Other types of things that might fall under things that are reprehensible would be, for some people, again, divorce, participating in non-Muslim religious festivals would also be something that would be reprehensible to many Muslims. Scratching yourself while praying is also considered reprehensible. Should be avoided. Then finally, there are those things that are haram, forbidden, like consuming alcohol or eating pork. Those things are forbidden. Here again, throw in the caveat. Just like there are Jews that have given up the kosher laws, there are Muslims who will drink alcohol. Right? And so there are bars in Abu Dhabi, or some of those other places. But technically, it is haram. It's forbidden. So, where does Sharia come from? Where is it that they developed this? Because we talked about how the Quran, while important, doesn't have a lot to say about legal matters. There is no official priesthood. You're kind of left to your own morality. And only about 10% in the Quran deals with things like prohibition of foods, family laws, taking care of the poor, rules about witnesses, bans on interest. And so a lot of the source for Sharia comes from the Sunnah, the accounts of the Prophet's behavior and deeds. Situations where he approved something or did not approve something. If he was silent about something, that meant it was consent. And so the idea is because Muhammad was blessed by God, you want to be like Muhammad. Also important for Sharia are the Hadith. These are sayings of the Prophet. And just to make the distinction, of course, things not found in the Quran. For Sunnis, there are 6 collections of the sayings of the Prophet believed to be authentic. Canonical means a accepted book. Right? And so just like we have the canon of the New Testament, the 27 books of the New Testament, there are 6 collections of Hadith sayings that are canonical. They were gradually collected over time. People would travel all over the place trying to collect these sayings. And the sayings would be passed along through families, through oral tradition. It appears, according to some of the records, there were 600,000 traditional sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. One of the major collectors, a man named Bukhari, accepted only 4,000 of those as authentic. So there was a lot of culling that people did. Basically, the decision was based on the content. Right? Does this fit in with other known sayings of Muhammad? Does it fit in with the Quran? If it's contradictory, it's probably not true. And the chain of transmission. Who is the person that claims to have heard Muhammad say this? And there were about 2,400 people that they thought were authentic transmitters. I'll give you some examples of the Hadith. Here's one. On the authority of Ibn Omar, the son of Omar bin al-Khattab, I heard the messenger of God, and the TBUH is abbreviation for peace be upon him. And so a Muslim, when they say the name of Muhammad or the Prophet, will say peace be upon him. Right? So I heard the messenger of God, peace be upon him, say, Islam has been built on 5 pillars. And so here's this prophetic tradition. Testifying that there is no God but God, and that Muhammad is the messenger of God, performing the prayers, paying the zakat, making the pilgrimage to the house, and fasting in Ramadan. This is related by both Bukhari and another collector whose name was Muslim. So here's this chain of transmission. Right? Who's the authority? Well, it is Ibn Omar, the son of Omar bin al-Khattab. Well, who is this? Right? We talked about it earlier, and most people these days will put it as a U instead of an O, and so Umar, that's second caliph, right? Close companion of the Prophet. So I heard the son of the second successor to Muhammad. Right? So that's pretty close. Right? And so that's the chain of transmission, and then the content, right? The 5 pillars. Here's another example of a hadith on the authority of Abu Hurairah, who said, I heard the messenger of God, peace be upon him, say, what I've forbidden you avoid, what I've ordered you to do as much as you can. It was only their excessive questioning and their disagreeing with their prophets that destroyed those who were before you. This also related by Bukhari and Muslim. And so you have like these 4,000 sayings that produce the Hadith, you have the Sunnah, but in modern times there are a lot of things that Muhammad wouldn't have explicitly addressed, so how do you deal with that? Well, for a lot of Sunni Muslims especially, the way you deal with that is analogical reasoning. So this situation is kind of like this situation that Muhammad did say something about, and so we make a connection. So, for example, let's talk about what do you give as far as a bridal gift, dowry, not specifically addressed. So the Imams suggested that the loss of virginity, right? And that's what happens in marriage, is the loss of virginity. It's similar to theft. Now again, I'm not saying this is good reasoning, but this is how it's reasoned. Right? So loss of virginity is similar to theft, and the penalty of theft is amputation. So the bridal price was set at the value stolen goods had to be worth before amputation would occur. Right? And so since loss of virginity is like theft, you kind of think, okay, how much would it have to cost before you lose a hand? Back that off a little bit, that's how much you owe me. Right? So this is analogical reasoning, right? And so if it's not addressed, there's these attempts to kind of, all right, well, this is like this other type of thing. Now again, a lot of this is meant to be done by consensus, right? It's not just some guy saying, oh, I know. Right? Let's think about cutting somebody's hand off. It's a consensus, kind of like how the rabbis talked about different things as well.